Shalom, Holy Blossom. Last week, it felt good to join the UJA online rally, where thousands from the Toronto Jewish community gathered to show solidarity with the State of Israel. And this week, it felt good to join a small group dressed in white for an interfaith call for peace and coexistence among Israelis and Palestinians. The demonstration was organized by 3 young women. They called for no flags, only signs with slogans for peace. My sign carries the beautiful verse from Psalms, "Empathy and truth shall embrace, justice and peace shall kiss." Just 2 hours before I headed out the door with my sign, the ceasefire was announced. And I was so happy to see so many Holy Blossom congregants there. We were about 150 people on Yonge Street, but hundreds more honked in support as they drove by. I know Israel and our relationship with Israel, our responsibilities to Israel are all we can talk about these days, all we can think about. Yossi Klein Halevi tells the story that he was once at a dinner party where he met a diplomat from Belgium. And when the diplomat introduced himself with a handshake, he told Yossi, "I believe Israel has a right to exist." To which Yossi replied, "That's good, because I believe Belgium has a right to exist." The exchange gets to the root of the absurdity of today's rhetoric. Why does the world debate for nearly a century now whether or not Israel has the right to exist, whether or not Israel has the right to defend herself? The debate grinds on in the halls of the UN, in the streets of Toronto, and in the endless web of social media. Some celebrities, social justice leaders, and memes are trying to mainstream what used to be a fringe ideology. Slogans like Zionism equals racism, or Israel is an apartheid state, or cruelest of all, that Israelis are likened to Nazis attempting genocide. It is hateful, it is hurtful, and it is false to say any of these things. It can be confusing for Jews to hear these things. It is confusing for people to hear slogans that legitimize Hamas as well, when it is, according to the government of Canada, a terrorist organization. We should absolutely weep for the children of Gaza and all the innocent victims of Hamas's terror. The terror it lodges against its own people, as well as against the civilians of Israel. Zionism asserts that the Jewish people has a right to self-determination in our ancestral home, just as the Belgians do. And I would add, just as the Palestinians do, which is why I am a Zionist who yearns for the day when there will be a peaceful Palestinian state. The world should be able to handle one small Jewish state. Israel does have the responsibility to defend herself and all her citizens, including the 20% of her citizenry which is not Jewish. The recent outcry from Arab and Palestinian citizens of Israel was painful to hear. I believe it is a wake-up call that something has to change to ensure the full realization of the promise of Israel's Declaration of Independence, where it is written, "The state of Israel will be based on freedom, justice, and peace, as envisaged by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex." There is much work to be done. And as all Israelis are now coming out of bomb shelters to sweep away the rubble and repair the ruins of the last 11 long days and nights of rocket fire, I believe there is greater recognition of wrongs that need to be righted and rights that need to be upheld. You know that critique of Israel's government is a favorite pastime of Israelis of all stripes. So they are the first to say to us, "You want to criticize the government of Israel? Bavakasha." And I believe that diaspora Jews must stand in strong solidarity with Israel, always, while joining in that conversation. Israel's declaration of independence also calls on diaspora Jewry to participate in the building up of the Jewish state. We do not have a vote, but we do have a voice. One great way to learn more about how this is possible is through Artsa Canada, the Zionist organization of the Canadian Reform Movement. Now, I know there's a lot of anxiety locally now among Toronto Jewry. Just earlier today, I received a note from the UJA's Security Council saying that with the escalation of tensions in Israel, we've also seen an increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the GTA. These have largely been sporadic, opportunistic incidents targeting community members both in public spaces and in our neighborhoods. And protests have the potential to increase the frequency or intensity of these incidents in the hours and days ahead. And so, the UJA writes, we encourage community members to exercise awareness and vigilance as we go about our daily lives. And this includes being attuned to our surroundings when in public and avoid distractions like using your cell phone when you're walking. Try to walk with a friend or a family member and plan your routes accordingly. And if there should be any incident, be sure to report it without delay. And then the note concludes with, I think, the most important part of the message, actually. They say it is also more important than ever that community members be careful, be cautious when sharing information online. Circular, unconfirmed, or unsubstantiated reporting can have unnecessary impacts on our community's confidence and resilience. So that is to say, we need to be vigilant and we need to be calm and not to inflate or lead to unnecessary anxiety, not for ourselves and not for our children. I know that parents of children and teens and young adults are feeling especially vulnerable now. We want to protect our kids. We want to provide them with models of confidence in Israel and empathy for all humanity. So let me highlight 2 upcoming programs. This Sunday at noon for our high school students, there will be a conversation with Israeli high school students from the Leo Beck High School in Haifa, a reform high school with an excellent reputation, a very special Jewish school that is devoted to coexistence with its neighbors in Haifa. And then there will be on Thursday at 7 p.m. a briefing with Israel's Consul General Galit Baram. This is for our high school students and their parents. Earlier today, a 20-year-old congregant texted me with a photo of his Raptors t-shirt and a silver Magen David necklace. And he said he bought it for himself today and that he will wear it to show that he is not afraid. This little text almost brought me to tears. Tears of pride and tears of lament at the same time. Why, oh why, should a young Jewish man living in this great, diverse, and safe city of Toronto in 2021 be made to feel this way? So tonight at the Shabbat dinner table, Adam and I will bless our 3 sons with Birkat Kohanim as we do every week. But this week, with a little extra kavanah, not only because the words of this threefold blessing comes from this week's Parsha, Naso, but also because we are all in need of God's protection, because the pandemic and these 11 days of Israel under fire and the shockwaves that are reaching even the faraway reaches of the diaspora here, we feel our vulnerability. And so I offer you this blessing as we prepare for Shabbat. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and protect you. Yael Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, may God's light enlighten you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, may God's presence draw near to you and grant you shalom. Shabbat Shalom.